What's up, friends? I'm gonna do a quick little demo on drawing lips. So if this is the edge, I kind of marked it already for myself, but that's the edge. That's the line in between the lips, but we're gonna make our lips open. Not a lot. But we'll do something like that. I think everybody focuses on the silhouette of the lips too much. What I recommend is just focus on the where the lips meet. And the gap from the upper lip to the lower lip. I think if you do that, it makes it a little bit easier. I'm gonna make this open a little bit more so we can see some more teeth. I know I don't typically go live on Instagram, so I think this might be my second time ever. So hopefully, I hope you guys are doing well. I'm almost ready for Christmas. Now I'm just going to draw a little guideline. There's the center of the upper and the lower lip. So right here, I start with a little V. These are going to be some thick, luscious lips. And then I just kind of curve it down. It comes together pretty quick once we get everything laid out. So I try to keep everything, like always, as simple as I can. So right here, if I just draw, I call this the meat of the lips. Kind of this jelly bean shape or an oval. And if you did that on both sides, that's kind of the meatiest area. And then underneath, we'll draw the bottom and wrap it around. And that lip, that lower lip might be, let me look. Good enough, but I am gonna fix the top. I think that little V is a little too wide. Okay, that's a little bit better. And then now, I'm gonna use a 3B pencil, and I'm just gonna shade this all in. So when you're trying to draw anything realistically, it's best to try to think of just three values: black, gray, or white. And in my anatomy and portraits course, we go into this in detail, but I always say you should never have any white on your paper. So even when we draw the teeth in here, the teeth aren't going to be white. They're going to be gray. And the reason for that is if I was going to draw, for instance, I just posted a snowman video. If you didn't see it, go to the link in my bio and you can click and watch a live class, a replay. But if I was going to draw white snow right here, how am I going to do that with pencils? The only way you're going to do that, this is what our drawing is going to look like, is if you had gray on your paper somewhere. And then you can erase and you could have snow. Can't do that here. So you have to have gray. My wife is a pale woman of Irish descent. And even if you took a photo of her and converted it to black and white, her skin's going to be gray. It's not going to be white. And she may have like you know how the girls, they like to put that little highlight on the tip of their nose with the makeup and all that. Think about that. You're not going to see that. You need contrast next to it. But even that little white highlight on the tip of their nose, think of that as the brightest. You can never see that if if you didn't have contrast. This is just a blending stump. It just paper wound up super tight. You can see I get a lot of use out of it. But all it's doing here is just pushing the graphite into the tooth of the paper and just making it a little bit smoother. And the cool thing is, when you're doing this, when you're smoothing it all out, it's loading it full of graphite like a painter would be loading their paintbrush. So then when you get done shading it all in or smoothing it all out, you can move it to other areas. That's going to be our gray teeth. Now generally, when you're drawing lips, the upper lip is going to be darker than the lower lip. That's because the lower lip, think about it right here, that area, the little meaty area, protrudes into the light more than the upper lip. Right here would be in the light more than right here, because this part of your lip is coming in towards your teeth. So some people think, oh, I need to make the upper lip because it kind of protrudes out, it's going to be in the light more, but it's the opposite, as long as the light source is coming from up top. All right, so we've got, we'll just call this all our midtones. Now we could go and start adding some of our dark values. And in this case, I'm going to use an 8B pencil. And you can see how much darker it is than the other pencils. So I'm going to start right here. Maybe that's there's the center line in between the two front teeth. I'm going to draw kind of this little triangle shape. We'll do one over here. I think that's about right. And up like that. And all of this, I'm going to make this lip a little bit thicker. Now all of this could be colored in as dark as you could go. You don't have to really worry about drawing each individual tooth. Just draw a silhouette with the shadow, and it creates the shape of the teeth for you. You might see one more back there, but that's going to be pretty dark. And then this one's going to be a little bit darker. Sometimes I have to stand up and look at your view, because my view here at an angle is looking down at my paper at a 45-degree angle. So it always looks different. As a matter of fact, let me change this. See how it gets that shiny spot? I want to avoid that because it's really dark. There we go. All right. Now I'll grab my blending stumps again. Kind of smooth that out a little bit. Okay, I'm gonna go back to that dark pencil, that 8B. I always put like a little dot right here, right? That's like the little crease. We'll start creating some of our details now that we have everything kind of sketched out and put right where it belongs. All right. Let me just touch this stuff up down here. I don't know about you guys, but I'm nowhere near done with my Christmas shopping. And starting to get a little stressed out. Okay. I'm kind of making just a little subtle shadow underneath the lip as well. But now I'm going to switch to a 2H pencil. And this one draws very, very lightly. You can see if you look at the graphite, it has a really, really small, thin graphite core versus this one. This one's really soft. The softer the pencil, the darker it draws. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but if you weren't, now you are. But I don't really want to draw the line in between the teeth and separate them, at least not the center teeth. They're pretty close together. But over here on these ones, you can. The problem when you do this, sometimes, if you've ever seen any of my videos where I'm drawing teeth, is you can make them look gap-toothed very easily. And if they do have a gap, that's fine. Gaps are making a comeback, but if you're not doing that intentionally, oftentimes it'll make it look a little silly. And these teeth are going to be a little bit darker, like I said. But now, if you have enough gray on the teeth, you can go back with an eraser and you just put little highlights. Doesn't that look cool? Just have one little spot. That's why you need gray, because the only white on your paper should be small, tiny, little bright highlights. All right, now we can start adding some of the shading. So this is my 3B pencil. Again, I'm going to touch this up a little bit more. And these are called contour lines. Just by making these small curved lines, you can see, and on this side, they're going to curve the opposite way. It's going to create the form and show the contour of the lips. And we're going to blend over this afterwards, but it's going to leave just a little bit behind and make those lips look round. And as I move my way down, the direction is going to change to where they're almost just laying over on their sides. All right, and I'll do the same thing over here. And remember, once we get this way, it starts to change direction a little bit, or curve a little bit deeper. We can do the same thing down here. Here's our center line. And start adding these little contour lines. Kind of like a globe. If you look at a globe, right down the center, the line is straight, and then they start to curve more on the outside. And we're going to cover all this up, so it's not a big deal, but it will leave just enough behind to leave, or to kind of show or give the impression of the contour or the form, and make those lips look nice and thick. And then eventually we'll start adding some little highlights and stuff, and we'll do the same thing with our eraser, and it ends up creating more texture. I'm just going to blend it. I'm going to try to go somewhat in the same direction as those little contour lines that we did. If you went this way, it could end up making a little checker line and make it look funny. So remember, the lower lip is generally a little bit lighter than the upper lip. Depending on your light source, obviously. All right. Now here's the fun part. I'm gonna get my 4B pencil. It's a little bit darker, a little bit softer. Still has a, it's not as thin if you look at the core as this one. Definitely not as thick though as this guy. Somewhere in between. This is, yeah, it's it's somewhere in between. So I'm going to start and create this kind of chunky, thick part of the lip here. Again, I'm using the side of my pencil because it has softer lines. If I use the tip, it's going to be real sharp lines. And I want this to be soft shading. It looks a little bit funny when we first start. Like, why wouldn't we come all the way down here? But that's intentional. So there's our first kind of the start to our thick lips. And we'll do it again over here. I'm using the side of my pencil. You can see it looks a little bit shady or sketchy. So I'll just jump back to my blending stump. Just kind of blend it all together. And then I know this is why you need, so watch what happens when I just draw. So we don't really have any really dark values except for the crease right here, or the shadow right here in the mouth. But watch what happens when I draw this really dark line. It really makes that lower lip stand out more. And creates the edge. And you don't even have to go all the way around. Just do that one dark little line right there. You can even bring it up a little bit more. And it just creates a shadow underneath and really makes that lower lip stand out, make it look like it's, like you can see the edge here. And how the underneath the lip is back further. Okay, now we can go, I can go back to my 3B. And I've noticed most of the time, the edge of the lips out here are usually much darker than over here. So I'm just going to darken those up. And remember, that upper lip needs to be darker than the lower lip anyways. Do the same thing on this side. I'm not practicing what I preach as far as those contour lines, doing your shading in the same direction, but by using the side of my pencil, it shouldn't leave really harsh lines anyway, so I think we'll be okay. And then I'm going to darken up this little, the meaty spot. And then I'll show you a really cool trick to add some highlights and texture to the lips. And I know if there's some of you that are in my course, you've seen this, we go through this in my course. We go in my, I guess both courses, my anatomy and portraits, but my fundamentals course as well, we go over this. A little bit more detail, actually a lot more detail in the anatomy and portraits course, but so you might be familiar with these little tips and tricks already. Now I'm just going to blend that. Letting the tools do the work for you. Okay. Now, here's the fun part. You could start the same way that we started, doing those little lines with our darker, or with our shading. We could do it with our highlights. And it'll start to, and you want to do it subtle, or be subtle. Don't go crazy with it. Just a little bit on the top, but down here on the bottom, it's going to be more, it's going to stand out more. One right down there. And then the thicker these lines, it kind of makes it look glossier. So if we were just doing like this, it's not going to look super glossy. So we're going to give her kind of a thick, glossy look. And then we'll bring it out here. But these little guys are awesome. These little mono zeros. But you can see with just those, erasing those little spots starts to really make it come together. This lighting is horrible. All right. Now the cool thing is, right next to each one of these little highlights, if you went in and added a little bit of shading to the left-hand side, it gives it even more depth and more texture. Do the same thing over here. We've got my mother-in-law's here, and they've been baking cookies for probably 4 hours now, and they won't let me have any. I only get the ones that are crumbled and fell apart. It's not right. But they've got a little bit of everything. I think peanut butter cookies are my favorite. And luckily, a couple of those fell apart, so I was able to get, I don't know, 1.5 of them, 1.5 of one. But the chocolate chip and all the other ones, those are holding together pretty good, so they're off limits. I'm just adding more contour back into it, a little bit more detail. And then I'm going to jump back to my darker pencil, really punch in some of the shading on that lower lip. All right, I'll go over here, darken it up. And then I'll put a little darker crease right here in the center. Now here's what I mean about letting the tools do the work for you. So, like I said, we've been loading this up like a paintbrush with all of our shading. So now we can remember, no white on your paper. So now I don't even have to draw the shading over here. I could use what I've got on my blending stump. And it's going to be much softer anyways and smoother. And I can start adding some shading. It's really light. But this is what I mean and what I talk about in my course about letting let your tools do the hard work for you. Almost looks like a little mustache, but it'll make sense here in a second. I'm actually going to use a tissue and smooth that all together now. We'll go underneath. We'll do the same thing. Now remember, the chin doesn't hit the bottom lip. You know that little spot that the kids get pierced? Where would that go if your chin hit your bottom lip? And from here, I just pull it out. Real soft shading. Obviously, it only works if you've got a real filthy blending stump. And then your chin would go down here. But over here, I like to do it a little bit darker. Like the little creases on the edge of the lips. And then watch this. It's gray here, and we need that so when we grab our fine tip eraser, you can see those small, subtle highlights. And then one little pro tip I'll give you, usually right here, right above that dark line, you've got reflective lighting. And a little highlight there. That's it. From there, obviously we could keep working it and adding more detail and everything, but that's the basics for drawing lips and shading. And some little tricks I've learned over the years, so hopefully it makes sense. And make sure, if you guys haven't, I did my little snowman tutorial or snowman live lesson the other day, and some people missed it. So if you wanted to watch the replay, you could just send me a DM and I'll send you a link. But I just posted it in my story as well. But I also have my little drawing for fun drawing club. So most people aren't aware that I have a beginner one. It's kind of like my little simple, kind of whimsical drawings and cartoons and stuff. But it's not necessarily just for kids, because there's people from all ages that are in that. But anyways, in my bio, there's a link, and there's a few PDFs you could download, and just some fun. I have a kind of an eye pack, like an inspiration, so you could get some ideas for drawing different types of eyes and emotions. And then there's a mystery grid where you have to kind of piece everything together to figure out what the drawing is. And then what was the other thing? Oh, a coloring book page I just did of Santa. But check it out. If that's something you'd be interested in, click the link in my bio and it'll take you to somewhere you could download it. Other than that, Merry Christmas. Thanks for keeping me company for a little bit, and we'll see you next time.